Hello guys and welcome to my channel. My name is David and this channel is gonna be all about bodybuilding and bringing you the best knowledge when it comes to building muscle. I'm not gonna lie, I am from Poland, so it's extremely hard to reach out to the people outside of my country. So if you are from United States or any country outside the Poland, please subscribe to my channel. Please share this to your friends and basically help me share this information with everyone who is interested in it. Also, if you are from Europe and you like to support my channel and myself, please use the code Olszewski at www.propeptidy.pl and order the best quality peptides. They are shipping it throughout Europe, so don't worry about it. And without further ado, let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to the newest episode of my podcast. Today I have a very special guest. Although I think I said that phrase with every guest, but today we are seriously you are one person who are very different than the others that's previously been here on my podcast, just because you are a natural professional bodybuilder. And this is not common these days. How are you, AJ?
I'm very well. As I said off air, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I've listened to some others, amazing guests, and obviously they've got a huge amount of wealth of knowledge to share. So I appreciate you inviting me on, and I'm excited to talk about these subjects that we're going to get into in relevance to sort of natural bodybuilding. It's an extreme passion of mine. The natural side of the sport. Not that I am not passionate about the assisted side, but for me, ever since getting started in this sort of the fitness industry, and natural bodybuilding since 2013, 2014, the last decade has been dedicated towards myself as an athlete progressing through natural bodybuilding, but also all of my athletes being drug-free and building my coaching and every business that I own around natural bodybuilding. So there's so much potential in the sport, and hopefully we can dive into how people can achieve more naturally in this episode.
I'm very happy that you bring the passion and everything that comes with the bodybuilding, no matter if you are on or off anything. Yeah. And you are a perfect fit, just because I don't know, like a couple days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago or something, I just made a TikTok video, and it was about how you supposedly train if you are on or off, and people just go bizarre. You're bullshitting. That's impossible. You cannot. If you are natural, you cannot do this. You cannot do that. Just because, I don't know, people think that if you are doing anything that's like assist you with this journey, you are now became invincible. And yeah, and you can do whatever you want just because you're peeing like I don't know, like a 1 cc of testosterone or something like that. So I although you are maybe not like a familiar yourself with the assistant side, you are very well familiar with when it comes to what body can actually done without any assistance. So this is why I am so happy that I can manage to bring you on and speak about this with you. And first question, just because you said that you are, it's not like you are not interested in assistance bodybuilding, but you are just don't want to do this. And what do you mean by that? Why you are not wanted to go this route? And what do you mean by you are actually interested in the assistance side? Can you briefly touch this subject?
Sure. Yeah, of course I can elaborate. So when I first got into bodybuilding, which was when I finished racing in motorsport, because we run out of sort of funding for me to chase that goal of mine. I'm still very passionate about motorsport, but I wasn't able to make it my career. I wanted to be involved in racing from the age of about 6 to 7 years old. And I finished that when I was about 15. I was always training when I was like 14, 15. And then that took me into bodybuilding at sort of like 16, 17, 18 years old. And I went to my first ever show that I competed in. And I at that point, the only bodybuilders that I'd really looked up to, because social media was still, it was there, but it wasn't anywhere near the level that it is now. It's like a monster now. You go on there and you suddenly absorb so much stuff and see so many different people. It's good and bad. But I hadn't really seen any natural bodybuilders. I didn't really know what they looked like, because at that stage in time, the top naturals weren't really on social media. You didn't really see them. Like, no one really posted. No one really did progress updates. No one really documented their journey in natural bodybuilding. Like, it was unheard of in like 2013, 2014. So I went to my first show, and then that's where I saw my first sort of set of natural bodybuilders in the men's open classes and that sort of like higher echelon. I was competing as a teenager. So at that stage, I was like, I didn't really know what could be achieved naturally. For all I knew, I was making progress, but there was people in my gym that were on bits and they were making more progress. So that's all I'd seen. So I went to the show and I saw the caliber of the athletes that were sort of winning in the men's open categories, and I was massively taken back by it. I thought that this surely wasn't possible. This look, this hardness, this level of muscularity, and so ever since that day, I've been sort of, I said to myself at that point, I don't. For me personally, I am almost happy chasing that. I think a lot of people go down the assisted route because the amount of muscle that you can accrue and the conditioning or whatever you can, or the strength that you can attain naturally, perhaps isn't enough for them. And I feel like that's sometimes a double-edged sword, because in some cases, it's very much the right decision. People have maxed out their level of muscularity naturally, and they want to get bigger. Brilliant. No problems. And that probably needs to be one of the main reasons why they choose to go down that route. Is it's like a personal attachment, or it's maybe a competitive attachment because they just need to be bigger if they want an IFBB Pro card, etc. But for me, I've always thought the top naturals that I look up to, that level of muscle, that level of conditioning, and that's something I'm comfortable with. Like, I don't. It's not that I don't want more. It's like I don't need more. I'm happy to compete at that level of muscularity and get into that kind of shape and keep improving gradually year on year. And from a training standpoint, I am, of course, incredibly intrigued as to how strong I could get on assistance, massively, because strength for me is a huge thing. Like, I love training for progression. Ever since I first kind of absorbed content, this was back in about 2015 was the first time I started listening to a lot of stuff from Jordan Peters, trained by JP. For most people know him as trained by JP. And he's been just a massive influence on my entire journey. Like, the way my scope and vision for training, like the way I look at nutrition, my approach with business, like, that guy has been a huge inspiration for me as an athlete and as a business person. So he kind of laid the path for me to take my training in a direction in which I cared a lot about the logbook and strength progressions. And then that's led me down to to getting pretty strong across a lot of movements. And it always does make me think, okay, how much stronger could I be? But then I also realized that for a natural athlete, I've achieved a lot in terms of strength, and I'm only going to achieve more as I get older and older and more experienced. So, and I know a lot of natural bodybuilders that are far stronger than me at a lot of things. So there's still ceilings to chase. There's still more things to do and more progression to be taken on that route. So I think that's a large reason why I stay natural, and I want to stay natural. Business wise, I've fallen into a lot of things as well that has kind of come my way. Not out of just falling on my lap, but as a result of working for it. I coach solely natural athletes. It's my forte. It's my niche. It's where I'm good. Unless I've got, and it's been very rare, but unless I've got someone in my corner that I know that can work alongside me on the PED side of things, I don't coach assisted bodybuilders, and I don't particularly want to be honest. Bottom line, I don't particularly want to. I like coaching naturals. I feel like I know the process very well. And I feel like I can be one of the best in the world at doing this. With the amount of progression that I've made as a coach, putting people on stage, winning national, world, and European titles, not just myself, but athletes. I feel like I can do a really good job at this. So when you find something you're really good at, it's like you kind of want to just stick with it. And I feel like if I went down the assisted route, I then, as a role model, I shift big time, because a lot of my clients, I'm sure any coach is the same. A lot of the clients you coach are looking up to you as a role model. They're a person that, that inspires them, that motivates them in a way, and that they look up to. And if I suddenly change my scope a little bit, it's not that they won't see me as a role model anymore, but it does change things.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've always had in the back of my mind. And then recently, with behind me, you'll see NBW up there, which is Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide, which is basically a site solely for natural bodybuilders, to share their process, to log on forums, to watch video content, to learn, to educate themselves. And that then is like my second sort of, baby in terms of business. That kind of requires me to stay in this realm. So I've got a lot of things kind of keeping me in, but I'm happy to stay in. It's not like it's been a forced thing.
Yeah, funny you say that, just because most of the people think that they have to go on the assisted route just because this is like a better fit for them, just to market themselves, just to be in a great coach or something like that. I have many clients that just wanted to get in shape to do some sort of photo shoot or something like that, just to promote their business. And this is not always the ideal. And most of the time this is not something that's going to help you at all. The best way to do in whatever business, I think, is just doing something you love and doing it with a passion. And with a passion, the money comes. This is like it's easy. It's easy. It's like that. It's done. It's like bodybuilding. It's easy.
Yeah.
like Jordan said, bodybuilding is so simple.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. You kind of do it on autopilot because it's just something you love to do. And then that's what I think as well with coaching, is that I'm never having to force myself to do this, and I'm never also having to force myself into a role that I don't want to play. For example, I see in the coaching industry at the moment that everyone wants to be a salesperson. Everyone wants the sales strategy and the marketing strategy, and it's like, just be good at what you do. Like it's really not that complex. Yes, marketing, social media does matter to an extent, but the first port of call is having a real big passion for what you do. People will see that. Even if you're working with two people and you're extremely passionate about those two people are going to tell two more people. And then that's your marketing done for a large part of growing you to a small number of clients. But yeah, no, I totally agree with that perspective.
Yeah, I agree with you on 100%. Okay, so you touched the subject of the Jordan Peters, and when we talk about the Jordan Peters, although he is like for me, he's a man who's best described as a man who is just addicted to the progress. But the like a training aspect is something that's definitely gonna first came into your mind when you think about a Jordan. So
yeah,
I wanted to touch the subject of the training when it comes to natural bodybuilding. Do you think that the natural bodybuilder can train like an assist one? And if not, what are the biggest differences?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, a natural bodybuilder can absolutely train like an assisted bodybuilder.
Yes.
But the like, I think, has a little bit of like abbreviations over it, because there are some degree of small differences. And that merely just comes down to the recovery capacity side of things. Of course, when you're assisted and you're on cycle, your ability to recover is improved. When you're as a natural athlete, your environment of the best recovery is probably going to be when you're in that sweet spot in the off season where you're not too fat, but you're not too lean, and you're on good food. You're not forcing food. It's like that kind of sweet spot. That's probably where your best recovery is going to be. Your sleep's good, etc., all that jazz. And I often find, like, to be honest, like, for example, many people who listen to this who know me will know that for basically a whole year, my training partner was Cuba. And we trained together for a long time. And I can tell you firsthand that our volume was almost identical. And that proved to work super well. We prepped together. We did very similar volume. We auto-regulated our sessions. When we went in and we felt a bit smashed, we would potentially pull back a touch. There were things that we look back on in that prep, and now we know so much more. We do differently. But the main overarching theme of that entire contest prep was intensity of effort. Every set was to the death. And we'd train at that point as smart as we possibly could. There's probably smarter things we'd do now, but we trained as smart and as accurately as we could as well. So form was always at a presence. And at the same time, we tried to train as heavy the whole prep. It wasn't a case of dropping loading down to match the diet and do pump sets or anything like that. It was still hard and heavy the whole way. And I think that is, again, just a general confusion, is that natural bodybuilders are suddenly going to die into a recovery hole when they train to failure and train heavy, that their joints are going to explode and all of this rubbish. That your body has an individual tolerance. So finding your individual tolerance in terms of your recovery capacity and what you can recover from is important. It's always a varied outcome. It's always going to shift as well. It's never going to be the same. You're going to have days where you get poor sleep and you can recover from less. Days where you get good sleep, you can recover from more. It's a floating variable. So I think one of the best things that people can kind of understand, whether you're natural or assisted, is that you need to go in and apply intensity of effort on the gym floor. Like, learn how to train hard. That's the best thing you can ever do to understand what is your tolerance in terms of workload volume. And then you manipulate your volume around your phases. So if you're dieting and pulling down, and especially if it's a harsher diet like a mini cut or a tidy up, something like that, you're probably going to have to adjust your volume slightly, maybe change around your exercise selection as well. But you're going to have to do that if you're assisted as well. It's like it's exactly the same thing. I think the only major difference that I have observed from not only training with Cuba, but also like seeing a lot of assisted preps, is that the strength maintenance or even strength progression that you'll see in some assisted bodybuilders contest preps just does not happen when you're natural. Like, so for example, you'll see people assisted bodybuilders hitting PBs 5-6 weeks out as they're gradually incrementing cycle. Like, that's not going to happen naturally. Yeah. You're not hitting PBs 5-6 weeks out. You can hit PBs for the first perhaps quarter, maybe 2 quarters of a contest prep, as some of your leverages improve, like hinges, for example, maybe even squat patterns. You're able to get into sort of fully lengthened positions a little bit more. Perhaps you're fitter, all of that kind of stuff. So you can still progress. Like, just as soon as you pull the plug on the diet, doesn't mean you're like regressing, but there's just probably more of a negative performance shift at the back end of a prep compared to someone that would be on assistance, that would be able to use their androgen load to protect performance at that point. We can't. If anything, there's only one way androgens are going as a natural athlete at that stage, and that is
going
down a horrible slope. So, our tools is food, sleep, stress management. We can play around those tools a bit, but none of them are going to work miracles. And at that point, again, what really matters is that your intensity of effort is there. Absolutely. You're trying to maintain as much as you can in terms of strength, but your main focus always has to be like how that weight is moving. Because a mistake that I did make in that prep with Cuba is that I was trying to keep up with Cuba. So therefore my execution was dropping off, as he was actually probably maintaining execution and seeing strength hold or climb. I was trying to keep up. And that's where for a natural, you've got to kind of take yourself off that side of things and realize that it's okay to drop 5 kilos off a press or something, but retain the execution of that press. It's going to probably retain more muscle in the long run.
Yeah. Basically, everything you've just said, I was almost crucified for. Just because as I just said the same thing you just
TikTok's
said.
Horrible.
Yeah, and people just go bizarre just because people just cannot understand that some people are better like a suit to the bodybuilding genetically. and their genetics are just like a superior to the others. And I even have a clients that are enhanced and have like a less recovery capabilities than the people that are natural. And it comes, you have to account the stress management, the workload that they have every day and stuff like that. And people just cannot understand that. And I don't think that people just cannot understand. I think just people just like to lie themselves because it's easier. It's easier to do everything with reps, with reserve and stuff like that, just because you can't train so hard because you're gonna overtrain and stuff like that. They just cannot understand that for the natural bodybuilder, the only way that you can like be ensured that you're gonna grow is progressive overload, is doing better over time. If you are not doing this, you're just pumping up the blood, you're not going to grow at all. That's not going to happen. So it's, I don't know why that concept is not acceptable for some people, and they are just wanted to create some like a perfect strategy for natural bodybuilders, other than like the difference that like they need to find something that is definitely not gonna suit for all people. But the truth is that for the enhanced one, the only thing is that like the ensuring of maybe a little bit more retain of the muscle and strength, like you said, just because you have that tool that you can manage your androgens. But that's all. Maybe the fat burn in effect, just because you can use something like thyroid medication and stuff like that. But other than that, you don't have many tools. You still have to eat, sleep, train, and doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. People think that it's done for them when they take the assistance, right? You know, and it's a big reason why I actually think natural bodybuilding is so important, that if people find it early in their journey and they understand that they can try and experience a contest prep as a natural athlete, they'll learn so much out of that is massively cross-transferable to their ability to understand whether bodybuilding as a whole is for them. You know, it's like slamming, you know, assistance straight out of the gate is something that unfortunately some people get into the situation where that's just what they think is normal. So they just kind of have, like, they fall into that because they don't feel like, or they don't even know that natural bodybuilding even exists. That's part of the problem. But yeah, if people can find naturals and realize that you can do a lot, you can get strong, you can do all these great things in the gym floor, and you can get shredded and step on stage, you know, and then you like that process, you enjoy it, great, you like the competitive side of bodybuilding, but you want to be a much bigger person, which I totally understand, because like there is a some degree of a limit in terms of the amount of muscularity you're going to carry. Like, you know, it's nice to think there is no limits, but there is some degree of a limit. There is. You can progress, you can keep progressing, but it's whether you want to spend, you know, a couple of decades, maybe even more of your life in the natural side to get to your peak, which is maybe when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, or whether you really want to chase down, you know, an IFBB pro card, or you want to be an open pro bodybuilder, or you just want to be a massive dude, then, you know, going on the assisted side of things then makes sense for sure.
Who's your favorite natural bodybuilder?
That's a good question, to be honest. So for a long time, like when I first got into the sport, one of my favorites was Brian Whittaker. He won the WNBF World's overall title in 2015. And he stood out to me. He won the lightweight title multiple times in the pro class, but there was one time where he won the pro overall. So he beat the middle and the heavyweight as a lightweight, which is very rare. But he stood out to me because I'm like a lightweight competitor if I, you know, in the pro classes. So he stood out to me because he won out of sheer conditioning and shape and his ability to pose through his weaknesses and hide them. And he's just granite peeled, like ridiculously peeled. So he always stood out to me. But then after that, I kind of became very close friends with a guy called Ben Howard, who's now one of my closest friends. And he's also a Brian Whittaker-esque kind of physique, a little bit of a smaller build, but unbelievable conditioning, rock hard, glutes like you've never seen before, literally like caves inside his glutes, which is nuts. And then again, he became one of those people that I kind of look up to. So I think those two really stand out for me. At the other end of the side of natural bodybuilding, I think David Kay, Chris McCready, those are guys that I look up to, but a little bit in a different way, because Dave and Chris are much more muscular individuals. They are the 190 plus pound natural bodybuilders on stage. And whereas a Brian and a Ben is like 160-pound bodybuilder. So they're very different inspirations. Not that Dave and Chris don't get peeled, because they absolutely do. They're just, for me, it's a little, at this stage, especially in my career, it's like, so I'm 27. Keith's younger than me, but his ability to grow muscle is obscene. He obviously works incredibly hard, but he's also got good muscle building properties. It's harder for me to look up to those people because they are a little different to my physique. They just naturally carry that bit more muscle. So I found it easier to look up to individuals that kind of their selling point is either shape or really good conditioning, which is something that I've always kind of prided myself on, is that I've taken myself to stage in really good conditioning every time that I've competed. And that's kind of what's alongside shape has allowed me to do well.
Yeah, we always tends to look up for the guys who are looking kind of like us. So I get it. I am not gonna even pretend that I know those guys, just because I am not so much for the natural side. But I just wanted to hear a couple names from you, just because I think the problem is that there are not so many opportunities to see these guys online, just because when you a type of fitness hashtag or bodybuilding, anything like that, you're not gonna find natural guy. No, not even a chance. So the first guy, other than guys from the 3D muscle journey, and of course the bio lane, Lane Norton, was the Aaron Curtis. I was the guy who is
the Australian dude.
Yeah, I love him. he's
he's
not only a great bodybuilder, but he's funny as fuck. I don't know if you see his post on a Facebook, but he has a tendency to just go to a random posts and just typing something so silly that no one even understand that other than him. So it's I don't know, he's just typing some I don't know, a kangaroo boobs, and just go. Just leave the page. he's just awesome, dude. Okay, so I think that the training part of the equation is covered, just because you basically do everything like Cuba. So if you do any a sort of intensifiers, drop set, rest pause, sets to failure and stuff like that, you just basically have to manage it accordingly to your abilities to recover. Yeah. So this is not a rocket science. It's just you observe, you adjust, and that's all, simply.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the nutrition, this is something that it's probably going to be interested for many guys, just because when it comes to the natural people, I see the tendency to go outside the borders when it comes to for example, bulking. What do you think when you in the off season? Are you think that it's beneficial to do something like a dirty bulk, or staying in a great shape is actually a good idea when it comes to the insulin sensitivity and stuff like that? What do you think is the best approach?
Sure. So I think just like anything, it really does depend on the individual, their goals, their response, etc. So this whole section, training and nutrition, is governed by individual response. We can definitely agree on that. But when it comes to pushing up as a natural bodybuilder, I think one thing that I definitely believe in is the fact that when we're looking to build as much tissue as possible, you mentioned it earlier, it's progressive overload, right? So we need to get athletes in the position in which they can apply the most progressive overload to their training. And often that comes from not staying 15 or 20 pounds above their stage weight. For some people, that element of staying close to stage weight, which I'd say anywhere between 10 and 20 pounds is pretty close to stage weight if they're legitimately peeled, is potentially not going to produce the best performance. For some people, it will. I know, for example, even like a Dave K, he said it on many podcasts before, he doesn't go much above 15 pounds above stage weight. He's also someone that's deadlifted 220 kilos for 20 reps. That's, a ridiculous feat of strength. He can do that with probably still some lines in his ass, but there's not many people in the world that can do that. So for most people, we need to probably be seeing, let's say for an average 160-pound competitor, we're probably looking to take that competitor up to 200 pounds in the off season, 40 pounds above, maybe even a little bit more if they're a very young individual and they're in a stage where they can grow a lot and their propensity to put on muscle is great. That push will guarantee that we've had many, many weeks of progressive training. It will guarantee we've spent many months in an environment of a caloric surplus, which we know from a natural bodybuilding standpoint, again, even an assisted bodybuilding standpoint, that environment is where you're going to be packing on tissue. You're not going to be packing it on in a deficit, very rarely, and you're definitely not going to be packing it on unless you're at a very high level of body fat, or let's say a decent level of body fat, and you've got lots of energy availability from that body fat, or you're undertrained and you're coming back off a stint where you've not been training for a while. You're probably not going to be building much at maintenance if you're an advanced trainee either. So we need that caloric environment as well. So for me, like I said, that longer push-up just gives me a longer window of time for that environment to take place. I also find that, again, to use the phrase weight moves weight, it is to a degree true. You obviously, to some extent, that's going to be a negative. We'll see. I, for example, pushed up myself to the point where I am so soft that my leverages suck. I can't get into certain positions. For example, I can't get as deep as I want on a leg press because my hips and my glutes and everything just feels like it's getting in the way. I just don't feel mobile. It sounds ridiculous coming from a guy that only pushes up to like 210, but for me, that's carrying a lot of body fat. For someone, it's like Cuba would always say to me, like, I'm like 5'7", 5'8". He would always say when I was at like 212, he'd say like, that's like an assisted guy of the same height pushing up to like 280, 290, like comparably, because obviously I don't carry anywhere near that amount of muscle. Like comparably, it's like a maxed out assisted guy where your mobility kind of sucks and your fitness isn't great, even if you're doing cardio, because you're just carrying that amount of weight. So there is a downside of it. But especially when people have, like, for example, for myself, I carry body fat quite sort of heavily distributed in my lower half. So for me to get to a point where I have enough stability through my upper body, i.e. body fat on my upper back, to press really well and to be powerful at the bottom position of presses, I have to push up pretty heavy to get there in that good threshold of performance. Even on free weight movements, to have enough oomph and drive and power. And for me, my kind of chest and arms and delts have always been slightly weaker comparably to my back legs. So it's made sense for me to push up that little bit more. But what I then think counts on the counter argument to that is that people shouldn't be starting their preps at peak off-season body weights. So what I normally will do now is that people will push up to those kind of optimal thresholds, maybe even a little bit further than what we would deem as optimal. Food sources, by the way, because I know that you said dirty bulk wise, like food sources, I'm always keeping as good as possible. I think once we start to get down the path of just including a lot of processed items and meals off plan, we start to see more of a negative impact in terms of just digestive system function more than anything else. So if people really like struggle with appetite, I try and work in things like, steps in between meals. The use of glucose disposal agents is really good as a natural bodybuilder because it's one of your tools you can use. They help keep and manage appetite and also help manage insulin sensitivity. They then also like food options, like once they just get really poor, you end up just not even looking forward to anything you eat. It's just a chore, it's just a task. So keeping your food options good and varied and enjoyable is really important to having sort of longevity at the peak of the push. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of the whole like dirty bulk thing, pretty much mostly clean foods. And then, like I said, just to sort of recap that final bit, like the off-season weight is not where we'd start prep. So maybe we'd start prep a little lighter than that peak off-season push. So perhaps it would be, 10% lighter than you push up in the peak of your off season, that you'd end up starting contest prep at 20 to 25 weeks out from your first show. And that will, again, for a natural bodybuilder, allow for basically a slower prep timeline, which for most people makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that will govern your ability to retain performance and therefore muscle will be your rate of loss. And a lot of people, I've seen this time and time again, will coach naturals like assisted, or like assisted that haven't really caught up with the fact that still losing slow as an assisted bodybuilder is probably better than losing fast and dropping at a ridiculous pace over 12 weeks. Yes, some guys can maybe get away with that, but there's a lot of people that would probably benefit from dropping slower and actually retaining more tissue and retaining more performance. So I think as a natural, when you map out prep timelines, often it's going to look like a 20 to 25 week contest prep from a pretty decent start point. And that will include time to potentially diet break, but often just refeed and like replenish and pull back up and pull back down to keep as much muscle fullness as possible, try and protect performance. So yeah, and I actually think like a lot of, I'm not sure about you, mate, but I've seen in the assisted side a shift over to longer preps as well. I'm not sure whether you've seen that as well, but definitely with the content that John Dewett's been putting out with J3U. I know Cuba himself, used to do a lot shorter preps. I think I've seen people move to slightly longer preps, not maybe as long as naturals, but just giving themselves a little bit more time nowadays compared to perhaps what we'd seen in the past, the 12 to 15 week preps, where the rate of loss is potentially a bit higher.
Yeah, I am not so believing in like a 25 week prep or something like that.
That's super long.
That's super long for enhanced guy. But I know that for natural, that like a 25 is a good range, just because, like you said, it's better to just doing it a little bit slower, just to prevent the muscle from just basically dissolve. But what do you think? You said 20 to 25 weeks when it comes to the contest prep, but when it comes to the off season, how long you think the natural guy seriously needs to like focus on building to realistically build something? Just because for enhanced guy, there's a tendency right now to doing something like 8-week push, then like a mini cat and something like that. Is
sure.
Is it possible for a natural guy to do something like that, or is just stupid idea?
I think we do need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
I think often it depends on the start point. So, for example, exiting a contest prep from a hormonal standpoint, we're going to be in a position where the goal is not to grow initially. The goal is to recover. So we're going to spend at least a couple of months just focusing on getting things back to a good baseline in terms of just how that person feels. And then if it means also taking blood work, which is often the case, we will do that. And make sure that comparably to where we've had bloods in the past, things are looking in a better spot. And then from there, we can start to think, right, okay, we've got these things in an environment where it's clear that we can get to growing, and we'll get to growing some more. So volume will come up a little bit, intensifiers might come back in, all of these things that will allow us to produce more of a growth stimulus, but they're not the best when we're trying to recover. So, rate of gain out of a contest prep is sometimes pretty quick to establish those recovery baselines. I think the whole really slow exit of a contest prep is kind of in the past for natural athletes. We now realize that it's actually important to get body fat on relatively quickly, not excessively, but relatively quickly. So, looking like, for example, myself, again, 160 pounds as a competitor, I'd be looking to get a good 6 to 8 pounds on within a couple of weeks. And then that will get me up to a nice point. And then from there, it'll be very, very slow. But those first 6 to 8 make you feel like a human again compared to how you feel right at the back end, really, really light. But then the actual off-season length, honestly, I think a year between sort of a whole year of an off-season really is going to allow us to quantify some improvements, maybe get back on stage, not necessarily always heavier, but better, more mature muscle, more muscle density, maybe 1 or 2 pounds of stage weight, perhaps. But I don't often like to focus too much on the actual stage weight number, because there can be so many intricacies of that can change that soul number. I've seen people step on stage at the exact same stage weight as they were a year, 2 years ago, but look drastically different. Yeah. And 1 or 2 pounds of stage weight as a natural bodybuilder can make a massive difference. Huge. So yeah, and also, again, the recovery standpoint, a year between contest preps is going to allow you to get into a good spot to be able to shift back into what is another long diet, where, again, if you've not focused enough on recovery from a metabolic standpoint, a thyroid output standpoint, all of these things that you're going to have suppressed during the diet might not have got back to the baseline in which you want them to, and then you're basically just dragging yourself through another contest prep with a poorly responsive body, and that never is fun. And that also probably is quite detrimental to long-term health as well. So I typically like to take a gap between contest preps.
Okay. I have a very important question. How do you like to set up your macros with your guys? Just because for natural guys, obviously fats are going to be much more important. I wanted to know how many grams for a kilo, or maybe for a pounds, but ideally for a kilo of the body weight you like to set with your guys. And how are you counting the macros? Do you count only the protein from the animal sources, like meats and stuff like that, or everything?
So let's first cover the macro side of things. So I don't really have ratios off the top of my head, but let's just go off a ballpark. So I typically won't ever see fats in a female or a male go sub 30. I've never really had anyone sub 30 grams. And that's just ensuring that we actually have some direct dietary fats in the diet, and we can at least afford to fit some of those in. And equally, we can keep like an omega in the whole diet. You know what I mean? Like, we can at least have some baseline. Then protein wise, the lowest I'll ever go in a contest prep setting will be 1 gram per pound of body weight. And that's just body weight, that of course will be close to lean body weight because we're getting lean. And then at that point, I'll also be keeping a very good eye on this when we come to protein. I'll be keeping a very close eye on the protein, the amount of protein from a quality source that we're getting per meal, just so we're checking that we are, of course, trying to spike, having enough to spike leucine, or spike muscle protein synthesis from leucine, should I say, sorry. So if we're having, again, a good 25 gram quality protein serving per meal, that's probably going to be ticking the boxes for most people. Athletes that are heavier, a little bit more, perhaps. Athletes that are lighter, a little bit less, perhaps. But that's going to be protein sorted, and then the rest from carbs. Typically, I find that from a fat standpoint, people feel significantly worse sub 40 than they do above 40. This is just the reason behind that, I think, is from a blood glucose stabilization standpoint, because when you go sub 40, the amount of meals that you're having that are also pretty low in carbs but have no fats to slow digestion is vast. It's almost your whole day. Yeah. So you never get that slight delay in that uptake of the meal. So then especially if you're doing steps and glycogen demanding activity, you're constantly getting hypos, and it's pretty rough to work through that consistently. So I find that like spreading the fats, if you have 40 grams, spreading the fats over the course of the day aids in that pretty dramatically. I'm also a fan of keeping little things like, for example, a small amount of intra-workout carbs, again, just to stabilize blood sugars. But yeah, I'd say that I'm as high carb as possible, moderate fats, and then adequate protein by ensuring that each meal has a good protein feed. And that's pretty much where I'm at. In the off season, again, it's a lot of it comes down to personal preference, but typically I'm relatively low fat, high carb, again, moderate protein. I'm not one to slam protein super high. I often think that it just really impacts digestion. There might, again, there's some studies out there that support higher protein intakes, but I often think that for most people, their ability to actually uptake and digest that amount of protein when you go super, super high, when we're talking like upwards of 1.75 grams per pound, it's like you're getting into thresholds that are just going to cause digestive issues more than anything else. So I tend to like to see carbs pretty high, fats moderate, maybe a little higher fats on rest days as well. For most people, I'm having that happen, touch higher, but there's only so much time you can keep that on a contest prep, because the fats have to go low at some point for most people on a rest day.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, so I think that we covered the nutrition side of the equation, just because there's basically basics.
Yeah, no surprise.
Yeah, but everyone's probably surprised, just because they are always wanted to hear something that is, I don't know. I don't even know what they wanted to hear. And I just ask, just because people love to hear about that. What do you think about the cheat meals when it comes to the off season? I know you said that they are actually not even necessary, but they can be counterproductive. But do you like to incorporate them into the plans of your clients, or this is more like a luxury for those who are, for example, like a high hard gainers or something like that?
Yeah, I definitely think for the people that struggle to gain weight, they can be a useful tool just to get in a lot of sort of calorie dense, foods in one sitting. They can also be something that's most of the time, I'd be honest, that I say I don't really program them unless people ask. They say, how many off plans can I have per week? And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, oh God, what am I working with? But no, it's like, I think most of the time it's social events, so most of my clients don't need an off-plan meal. They'll have one if they have a social event to go to, or they'll have one if they want to go out with their girlfriend and celebrate something, or they just fancy a bit of sushi, or they fancy a pizza with their girlfriend. I'm like, yeah, cool, that's fine. It's not a problem. So in those situations, it's of course absolutely fine. And we normally work out a strategy in which we'd, manipulate calories just a little bit on that day to ensure that we're not going sky high over. But yeah, it's not something I really program. And then in a contest prep, so I've had some clients, specifically clients that have been doing this for a long time, and clients that have, for example, I have like a wife and, kids, I've had situations where I've allowed those clients to go out for a weekly meal all together with the family. And that's just been something like a steak and vegetables, or a steak and potato, because it's an important part of their family life. And if I ignore that, I'm putting them in the contest prep hurt locker for 25 weeks, and I'm not allowing them to have one meal with their family. I just find it a bit ludicrous, to be honest, especially if they can have something that's pretty much within plan. It's not really a cheat. It's more of just a meal out in a social setting. As we get close to the show, of course, that sometimes gets removed as we need to be more accurate. But I feel like that's something that in the past, I would have thought that that's not something that I'd want to have as part of the plan, because I'm always someone that's like very meticulous. But I've kind of opened up my eyes to being able to be a bit more balanced with some people, which is important, because you're not always coaching robots, as much as us as athletes might be someone that I love being a robot. Like, I absolutely love it. So does my partner as well. We're both very robotic with what we do. So we don't care, even if the off season includes no off plan meals. We don't care at all. But if if I have a client that has a different mindset or a very different life to me, I have to understand that. And that's what arguably I think allows me to get results with pretty much most people that I work with, because it's not a one size fits all strategy,
Yeah, this is something I struggle with also. I am a kind of guy who don't like to do something like cheats and stuff like that. This is something that is not just like suits me very well. So if someone just wanted to incorporate them very often, it's something that's, I don't know, it's irritates me just because it's you have the feeling that they are doing something like a halfway. I know it's not. It's most of the time there is not, but I don't see the problem to do a cheat meals. I all very often gave them to my clients, but there is a really a big problem that people just cannot eat with like a moderate amounts of like a bad food, let's say it like that. If they eat like a fries, they're gonna eat probably the whole menu from that restaurants. And that's the problem, because if you say to someone just eat a burger, that's okay, and he do that, it's probably gonna be fine. If you eat one meal over the, I don't even know how many meals throughout the week, let's say 35, if you have 5 meals every day, that's going to be 35. It's not going to be something that's going to ruin your physique. But if you're going to binge, eat my. So that's the problem. That's the problem with the people. And next section is the regeneration and life hygiene, and this is something that we're gonna probably briefly touch, just because it's supposedly obvious. The bodybuilding is a sport, and when it comes to the sport, you're supposedly thinking about hydration, about sleeping well, about going to the physio and stuff like that. And people, I don't know why, just forget about it. And I just wonder how it's with the natural guys, because I've coached natural guys also, and I see the tendency that they are not taking it seriously. It's like, if you are not enhanced, you are not a real bodybuilder. So wasting a money for a physio or something like that is just a waste, and it's not like that. It's very important, in my opinion. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. If anything, I'd say like it's even more important, because again, with limited tools, you've got to capitalize on every single tool you have. So sleep is our ability to get growth hormone. It's like all of these things, they add up to us being in a better position to progress. So I every single client that I work with, one of the first things that we dive into is, what does your day look like? And when I know what their day looks like, I can pick apart things that are a problem. Like, for example, if I get in sort of the first 2 weeks of the client checking in, I'm getting their check-in at 2 a.m. I'm like, this is a massive problem. We need to stop this, and then it's no surprise that they're then not responsive to the phase we're in, and then they're complaining that they've not got energy and that the training's not good and the volume's too high. I'm like, the volume's not a problem. It's like your recovery's trash. So, like, when people take these things seriously, they'll soon realize that they've got way more in the tank than they think, not in terms of just performance, but their ability to focus on what they're doing on the outside of bodybuilding, their day-to-day life. It makes a massive difference to have a routine, to have structure, to take care of your lifestyle. Makes a massive difference to you as a human in your day-to-day life, not just you as a bodybuilder. So I even think, if you're not training and if you're not bodybuilding, you should get physio work, sleep well, hydrate well, take care of your mental health, because it just makes you a better person. So yeah, it's literally one of the most important things for human health, 100%.
Yeah, and I've always thought that for some people it's one or the other. So just because they are training, they are doing something for themselves. So they don't need to do anything more. It's enough. This they are healthy.
Yeah.
They are training
Yeah.
5 times a week. Okay, so what
Yeah,
about the
that's true.
supplementation? Just because this is something that some people believe a lot, and some people just think that it's basically trash. You don't need that. So I'm gonna incorporate every question just because probably if I ask like a briefly, you're gonna answer the whole question at once. So, what about the essentials for natural bodybuilders? What do you think about the health supplements? And are they necessary? And intra-workout nutrition. What do you think about them?
Sure. So basics for naturals, multivitamin, omega, a vitamin D if your multi doesn't cover the vitamin D, especially in colder months. Creatine, again, 5 grams daily. And that's pretty much it. Then you can go down the route of like, I really like stress management products. So I really like ashwagandha, L-theanine, magnesium glycinate. But again, they're cherry on top of the cake kind of items. If you've not got the first four, it doesn't really you don't really need the others. But if you can get them, I think they do make a positive difference. Um, like most, there is some new research coming out on like Tonka Ali, for Doja Gracistis. There's some research coming out on that, which perhaps is going to have an impact in terms of natural testosterone production. But I think from a natural testosterone production supplement standpoint, the best thing you can do is choose supplements that manage stress, because that's going to be the best thing that you can do to improve your natural testosterone levels is get good sleep. So if you invest in anything to boost your testosterone, I'd advise a good sleep formula
And I just
and a
wanted
good
to
stress
add
management
something,
formula.
just because this is something that people struggles to understand, that if, for example, the maximum testosterone is like 1,000 and you are at the range of 800, for example,
Yeah.
there's not even a 0.5% of a difference if you're going to bump it up to 1,000. You're not going to see it when it comes to
Very
the
small.
muscle, to the how you feel every day and stuff like that. And people massively wanted to increase their testosterone. And of course, if your testosterone is like 100, 150, 200, and you bump it up to 800, you're gonna feel a vast difference. It's gonna be a
Yes.
huge difference. But if it's like a upper limit already, you're fine. You're not.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything with it. You're gonna start feeling the difference when your testosterone gonna be like a 3, 4, 6, 25 times the norm.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the range when you are seriously seeing the difference when it comes to the body composition. So if you're not gonna raise your testosterone by a couple thousands, don't even bother.
Not worth it. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, agreed totally on that front. So it's more a case of, I'd say, management more than anything else, especially when you're dieting down to contest prep levels. I think you can manage the reduction that we see in testosterone a little better if you've just got good sleep hygiene, good stress management. And that's going to stop you getting further into the hole that you're inevitably going to be creating. Intra workout, yeah, I like intra workout. So I'm just a fan of a highly branched cyclic dextrin and an essential amino acid, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I get pretty much all of my clients to use at least an essential amino acid, and carb powders just depends on where they're at in what phase and their tolerance to handle sort of eating, drinking carbohydrates in session. Some people get some slight digestive discomfort even with sort of a high quality branched cyclic dextrin. So for some people, I keep them out. But yeah, I'm a big fan of those.
Okay, and the last question when it comes to supplementation, what do you think about the fat burners, and what are the fat burners that you like to incorporate in the plan of the cutting cycles, let's say, for your
Yeah.
clients?
Yeah. So pretty much none. The only thing that I will use occasionally, and I have used it for quite some time now with people who hold body fat disproportionately, and we have to potentially pull from more quote unquote stubborn areas, is your himbine. So your himbine is not banned in natural federation. Some people think it is. It's not. So you can use it. I like about 0.25 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, and we'll be taking that in a fasted state. We'll ramp up steadily to achieve, we'll understand tolerance. I won't use it with anyone that's experienced anxiety, panic attacks, etc. in the past, because it can kind of onset those quite a bit. Makes you feel pretty shaky and a little bit like not with it. So I prefer to not use it with those people. And I also don't like using it a lot. Don't like using it a lot with people that I know are quite stressy dieters, because it does promote obviously a sympathetic dominant response. And with that sympathetic response, if they're already quite a stressed out person, that's going to take that response into the whole day. And then we're going to start to see fluid retention, and we're going to start to see skewed scale weight. So I don't particularly like using it with those people, which is sometimes a shame, because those people are also people that have body fat distribution that would maybe favor using it. But it's just kind of I have to make an executive decision on those people. And sometimes the best port of call is to just allow that person to diet for slightly longer and not have to use that tool.
What about the L-carnitine, the injectable ones? Is the band, or just using it with injectables? It's something that it's just morally not suitable for the natural bodybuilders.
You know what? That's a really good question, because I'm still not 100% confident on that answer. I'm 90% confident that due to the fact it's an injectable, you're not going to be allowed to use that. But I've never used it with a client, and I personally wouldn't feel comfortable saying, okay, let's use injectable L-carnitine.
Do you use it orally then?
No, I have not used L-carnitine orally. No. So yeah, I guess I just again haven't been convinced enough to go down that path of using that tool. I don't think there's enough to quite support me going down that route, especially the injectable route. So it's just not a tool that I've really ever had to use.
That was just from my curiosity. But probably you're right. Just because you are not even allowed to do injectable vitamin C when you're a natural bodybuilder. So anything that it comes with a needle, it's just basically banned. So it's probably not going to be allowed. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, man. So we probably covered everything that I wanted to ask you today. Just because the last like a portion was the prep, but you've already said that the best way to do it is just doing it slowly and gradually. So
absolutely,
probably, and if we probably wanted to cover the whole contest prep idea and how to set up it and something like that, it's probably going to take more than an hour.
too long.
Just because it's a hard one. I'm so happy that you find the time just to meet me today and speak briefly about natural bodybuilding. I hope that it's going to inspire some people just to stay natural, and they are finally going to believe that you can and you should train as hard as you possibly humanly can, no matter if you are enhanced or natural. This is something that's gonna put you in a best environment to grow, no matter what. So if you have 100%. Something to add at the end, this is your time. You can promote yourself. You can promote your sponsors, and anything you want us to say this is your time.
Sure. Well, like I said, first and foremost, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been an honor. It's been a very, very quick hour. These things always go very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But it's nice to chat. And like I said, hopefully it does help some people. So if people want to sort of follow me and what I do and mostly my lifting, that's the only thing I really post on my Instagram. So if you like watching training, then just go ahead. So my Instagram is AJ Morris _. And then the only sort of other things are obviously from a coaching standpoint. If you're interested in coaching, I do have sort of links to apply in my bio. I'm limited in terms of spots for the rest of the year because it's very busy contest season now. But coaching interests go there. And then the site obviously is a great place to learn more. If you want to learn more about natural bodybuilding, follow some of the best natural bodybuilders in the world. and also just educate yourself on how to train, how to diet, how to take yourself through different phases, get opinions of people that have a lot of experience in this field. That's a great place to be. So you can head over to naturalbodybuildingworldwide.com and check that out. We've got a free trial, so you can try it out for 7 days for free. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. So nice and easy. But yeah, appreciate your time, mate.
Basically, every link and site that AJ just mentioned is gonna be in the description box below. So if you wanted to just scroll down and click on it, you don't have to type it just from the ear. So
yeah.
thank you once again. And if you're gonna find some time in the future, I would be very happy to do something when it comes to the contest prep, just because this is something that's even curious me as a coach, just because it's always great to hear the perspective of someone who is not basically allowed to help themselves and still achieve a great result with their clients. So this is something that's probably not only me, but many people that's gonna hear that one is gonna benefit from. And just at the end, I just want to remind that if you are not from Poland, but any country that's outside of mine, just please share this and subscribe and I don't know, like do anything just to spread this message throughout the world, just because living in Poland is very hard when it comes to promote everything that is in English, just because the YouTube have the algorithm and it's not gonna allow me to find you if you are living in US, UK, and anywhere else. So if you can and if you like it, please share this with your friends on your Instagram, anywhere. Thank you once again, and for those who are still with us, just don't forget to subscribe, comment, share, like, and do everything that's going to help us in the future. Thank you once again, and see you in the next one.